Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Beat the Clock podcast. My name is Myles Rubio-Garcia, and I am here to help you grow. Through the many timed interviews I'll be having, all guests will answer 4 time-specific questions. By answering these questions honestly, we hope to show you how each moment connects to the next. Whether they are entrepreneurs or thought leaders, all are invited to sit down, chat with me, and show you a realistic depiction of success. By doing so, we hope to change your mind and empower you to beat the clock. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Beat the Clock. My name is Michelle, but I like to call myself the Victorious MRG. I don't know that I've ever said that out loud in a podcast episode, but I do want to go ahead and kind of declare that into the universe because I want to brand it in pair with Beat the Clock, right? If I am challenging you every week to go out there and beat the clock, I got to be the person that's going to say that it's going to be a victory, you know? I got to set that expectation. So I am here bringing in people that kind of escape the typical 9 to 5 normally and who really go out there and chase their dreams and find jobs that give them purpose and that really, really stimulate their passions. If you like that, this is a great place to be. And so before we jump into the interviews, I always like to start off the same way. I start with the BTC affirmations. They are the same 3 all the time. Those of you who have been tuning in for a while know them, so say them with me. If you're new, no problem. I'll coach you through it. Number 1, I trust myself. So even if you feel like things are out of your control, you can decide into something else. Number 2, my time is valuable. So what you devote your efforts and time to matters, and you ultimately matter, so you can make your time serve you. And number 3, I can control how I use my time today. Because your time is valuable, you can take control, and you can do it without shame or fear. And so today, if we're talking about breaking the 9 to 5, I can think of nobody better than to bring in Myles. Benji's dad, as he is affectionately known online, started as a blogger, and this really stemmed more out of necessity than desire. I want to make that very clear, and he's going to tell you why in a bit. He is now, though, thriving. He has a YouTube channel. He creates courses. He's an online business coach, and he just started a podcast. So he's an entrepreneurial jack of all trades in the digital space. He is somebody who really never gave up, who really looked at others, and instead of victimizing himself, really said, hey, I can be part of that pack too. So if you need to hear that, I can think of no one better than Myles. Let's see how he beats the clock. And the clock starts now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beat the Clock. I am here today with online entrepreneur Myles. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing okay. How are you today, Michelle? I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you're here. To those of you guys who don't know him, he also goes by Benji's dad, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, and that's how they can find you on YouTube?
Yes, they can find me on YouTube at Benji's dad. That's kind of how everything got started right there.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. So before we do, really, really quickly, something that I do with all guests, and it's like a surprise on air if they haven't listened to an episode, I try to kind of describe their aura in a short little phrase. So yes, you're an entrepreneur. Yes, you're a dad. Yes, you're this, yes, you're that. But at your core, who are you, right? And again, I can only go by what I see online. So I'll tell you what it is. You agree or disagree. We chat a little bit, and then we jump into the questions. Is that okay?
Sure. Shoot it out. Yeah. Let's go.
So to me, you're an insatiable provider.
I could agree with that.
Yeah, because in everything you do, I feel like you're providing community. You're providing money for your family. That's what started it for you. You're providing resources. So you don't stop and you don't quit, and you're always just trying to help other people. And I don't know if that's like super fitting, but that's immediately what popped into my head.
No, I can agree with that definitely, because it's just what you find out is the more that you help people, the more that you're going to end up kind of getting what you want. I believe Zig Ziglar had the quote where he said, as long as you're trying to help other people get what they want in life, you're going to end up getting what you want in life. So that's kind of the mantra I've been living by, and it's been working out so far. Yeah,
I mean, even in your little YouTube cover banner, you even put welcome to the family or join my family. And not a lot of YouTubers do that. So it's really telling of you. And again, that's why I'm very happy that you're here with us today.
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah. And so we're going to jump right in. So, you know, by now, this is a timed interview. This is where it starts with the timer per question, right? So if you hear the buzzer, no big deal. But we're going to see how you do. And the whole point of this podcast is for you to beat the clock. So it's like a timekeeping and score taking on my end. Are you ready?
Let's roll. Let's rock and roll.
Okay, cool. So the first question we always ask is, who were you? So leading up to this point in your life, who were you before Benji's dad? What did Chris
Yeah.
Myles do?
Yeah, so I'm really kind of a serial entrepreneur, I guess you can call it. I've always had some type of business going on. They weren't always making money, unfortunately, but I've always had some way to have a little side hustle or something on the side. And even remember growing up, I would get like a candy sale or something at school. And I remember I would mark up the price of the candy when I went door to door just so I can so I could pocket some of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was just maybe they didn't think that an 8-year-old would figure that out so quickly. But even since then, I've always been hustling with something on the side. And because of all of that experience, really, I kind of just picked up experience from all of the failed experiences that I had with a business, maybe making a little bit of money, but then not enough to justify continue going with it. But then maybe making no money at all, but then getting a valuable learning experience from it. I tried to fail fast, I guess is the word for it. So that's basically what I was. I used to always have a 9-to-5 job as well. I've been employed basically since I was 16.
Me
So it was
too.
really weird for me when, the entrepreneur thing kind of took off within the last few years and was able to, finally walk away from that 9-to-5.
And so I saw on one of your videos, but I can't remember what did you used to do exactly? Because you said you used to make like 50 or 55K before.
Yeah. So I did a few things. So after college, I used to work at a bank,
Mm-hmm.
and I was helping small businesses get started with certain types of way to accept credit cards. So then, as they were accepting the credit cards, I would learn to do that. I ended up working more on the IT side of things versus the selling side of things. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of gravitated toward that. And then once I was doing that for a little bit of time, I ended up quitting and moving across the country. And when I did that, instead of looking for a bank job, I started looking for, little side IT jobs. And I ended up getting a job at a hospital. And that's kind of what I was doing before, but I wasn't a fan of it. I didn't like it a ton.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get the freedom that I wanted. Working at a hospital, literally, it's like a 24/7 job. I was on call like 3 out of every 4 weeks, and it was just a rough time. And it was one of those big experiences that showed me, yeah, I need to figure out something for myself.
Yeah. And what were you doing at the hospital?
Like what do you call it? Where you a little bit of IT work, where you basically just answer the phone anytime someone in the hospital has a computer issue. And so I'd go to them and help them out, and that was about it. It was kind of a high pressure situation because a lot of times when something was broken, someone's life was probably at stake at that moment. So there's things needed to be fixed yesterday,
Yeah,
when
that's what I
things
was gonna
went down.
say. That's a
Yeah,
lot of
it was
pressure.
high pressure. Yeah, it was definitely high pressure, but that's why I needed to get out of that situation. It was stressing. I'm getting white hairs and gray hairs or whatever you call it.
Were
It,
you a
it was
dad
time to move
already
on
at
to
that time?
something else. Oh yeah. I moved out of my parents' house when I was in my 20s,
Mm-hmm.
early 20s, after college. And yeah, I got married about maybe 5 or 6 years after that. And that's kind of where I am now.
Cool. And I know because again, I try to do some research. I know before you really found your stride in online entrepreneurship, you fell victim to some scams. So can you speak a little more into that and maybe those? I know you failed fast, but sometimes you failed hard too. So what did that show you?
Yeah, so I mean, I did like the normal thing that most people do because when we found out that we were pregnant with our first son, a lot of stuff had to change.
Mm-hmm.
My wife wanted to quit her job, and I needed to find a way to replace her full time income that she was making. So it was kind of like there was no option there. She told me she was going to quit her job whether I liked it or not. So I needed to figure out a way to bring in, some income. So I did what most people do probably is just I went to Google and say how to make money online. I knew I didn't want another job, where I had to go to outside of my primary job because I didn't want to spend more time away from home. So I was trying to find things that I can try to build a passive income online, try to build a business online, something that I can work on, whenever I felt like it, basically. And that's kind of how I got started. When I first jumped into it, I was doing like surveys and micro jobs and all of these really terrible things that aren't worth your time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
You put in so many minutes and hours worth of time, and then you end up getting like $5 back for it. And by the time you break it down, you've been making like $1 an hour, and because you're a contract worker, it's like they can kind of do that to you. So that wasn't ideal. And then I eventually stumbled on blogging, and really the rest kind of was history after about a year and a half of doing that.
Cool. And so was it scary to start a blog because there was so much on the line, or did that give you more fuel to kind of keep going?
Nah, actually, Michelle, it gave me more fuel, to be honest, because it had to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't not work. That's a double negative, but still, it had to work. Now, I didn't have many options there. And I think really that's kind of what gave me what I needed to keep pushing forward. Because to be honest, if you want to make money, with your business, that's what everybody wants to do, obviously. But then when you do it for a long time and nobody's reading your stuff, nobody's watching your videos, no one's listening to your podcast, whatever it happens to be, when you don't have that happening, all of a sudden that urge to make money, kind of falls to the wayside because, it seems like what you're doing is in vain.
Mm-hmm.
So when I realized that, I knew this can work because I saw so many other people doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just knew I just had to stick to it. And I just kept pushing and pushing. And I had a different a reason for pushing. And because I had that different reason, because I wanted to do it, for my wife, for my son, for the family, and then for myself to get myself out of a situation that I didn't necessarily enjoy, then it kind of pushed me over the edge.
And I find that really interesting that you say that, because a lot of people see so many others doing it and they think that the market is already too congested, and that's actually what repels them from trying. But for you, you saw everybody and you're like, hey, I can hang in there too. And that's like a very counterintuitive thought, I think, than other people.
Yeah, I'm probably broken. I don't know what's wrong with me. But
No.
typically, I saw a lot of people out there, and I'd watch a lot of their content online. I read a lot of their articles, and I just kept telling myself, like, I know. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I was basically like, they can't be that much smarter than me. I
Yeah.
mean, they're just doing something a little bit different, and I just
Mm-hmm.
needed to figure out what it was they were doing and then try to replicate the process myself. And it took a while. This wasn't an overnight success, but
Mm-hmm.
eventually things worked out when I kept pushing on it. I believe Thomas Edison, I'm full of sayings, but Thomas Edison said, he didn't fail. He just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. So that's kind of where I
Yes.
was. Every time something didn't work out, it was more of a learning experience so that I know not to do it next time.
I just watched an Edison documentary for my PhD program, and that guy was like insane, and his level of ingenuity is crazy. And I really like that too, that you're saying, those people aren't that much smarter than me, probably. And you have no reason to explain that. I think that all the time. I'm like, if that person can do it, and I feel like I could outwrite them, outproduce them, out whatever them, then what's not for me to try, So that's a really good point. So you have about 30 seconds before
Okay.
this timer comes up. Do you want to add
Uh-oh.
just a final thought, or you want to move on? Either one.
Just, whatever dream you have, just keep pushing and don't give up on it. Make sure that you have something behind you other than the fact that you want to make money. Have something behind you that will drive you to keep pushing without giving up.
Cool. So yeah, you made it just on time. So very nice. We're moving into the second question. So now here is where you can say where you are. We talked about what happened and how you failed, but now we're going to talk about what's working and what you're doing now. So who are you now, Chris?
I am a digital entrepreneur, blogger, YouTuber, course creator, coach, podcaster now
Mm-hmm.
within the last few months, and it's really fun. I haven't done all of those things overnight. Obviously, it was just I kind of work on what's called focus or follow one course until success. So
Mm-hmm.
I started with blogging. Once I got that to a point where I wanted it, then I moved over to YouTube. Once I got that to a point that I wanted it, then I moved over to course creation, and now we're working on podcasting. So it's just a step-by-step process that you go over the course of months or even years, and it eventually started to work out. So that's kind of where I am right now. I ditched the 9 to 5 eventually. I was able to do that. I've been working on my own now. I'm the unemployed CEO, I guess you can call it.
And you're
Or
making six figures doing that, right?
yeah, it's working out so far. So I'll keep doing it and try to stave off employment as long as I can. But it's good to see, see my son grow up, being able to be around every day. Those are big motivating factors.
Uh-huh.
But once he gets past the formative years, who knows what's going to happen after that, but we're going to go ahead
Exactly.
and enjoy it while it's lasting. That's for sure.
So time was a big thing for you. I keep hearing that, right? When you were at the hospital, it was like the time you experienced felt very um, unpleasant. And then, when you were in IT at the bank, that was not pleasant either, but it was boring. And then now, you're happy because of time. So time played a big factor in your decision making, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. Because time freedom is really underrated because you don't realize just how much time goes into working a job. And I'm not saying that every 9 to 5 job is like the worst thing in the world. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that, but I was looking at the amount of time I was spending waking up, commuting to work, being at work, and maybe having an hour lunch. So instead of working 9 to 5, you're really working 8 to 5, and then you
Mm-hmm.
got to leave 45 minutes, an hour, or longer, depending on where you're commuting to, and then that's to and back. All of a sudden I'm
Mm-hmm.
gone 12, 15 hours a day. And those are times that I mean, if anything that the pandemic recently has shown us is that being able to work from home makes a huge difference in your pocketbook. It makes a huge difference in your productivity. I mean, you have so much time to work on other things now other than wasting so much time really doing nothing other than just driving back and forth to work.
Right. Like I'm a teacher right now, but the goal is to be like you at some point. And man, like at first I was so shaken. I was like, how am I going to do this to be at home and to be on a schedule? I need to drive. I need to be in a building to have that structure. And I adapted pretty quickly. So that just really speaks volumes to the negativity or maybe self-limiting beliefs that we put on ourselves. We think we have to be ordered around, but because we'll experience this abundance of time, we'll really find a way to make it work and to find purpose in it. I mean, anyone who wants to get something done, right, will do that.
Yeah, I mean, and it is tough. I won't lie there because when you are working for someone else, they tell you your deadlines. They tell you when things are due or needs to be done, and yada yada yada. When you're working yourself, you need to have your own self-imposed deadlines, and if you don't, sometimes you might let things just kind of slide by the wayside. And I've done that. It probably took me a few months before I started realizing that okay, I actually do need to set a schedule for myself. I can't just wing it and just think things are going to happen no matter what,
Mm-hmm.
So once I actually sat down and I started kind of doing a little more planning with my schedule, maybe at the beginning of the month, beginning of the year, having quarterly goals, yearly goals, those kinds of things, it really started to kind of even out with my time. And I was able to actually have more time by scheduling the time, so it ended up
Yeah.
working out pretty well.
Yeah, I love everything that you're saying because again, it's super counterintuitive. And I think everything in life, like we've overcomplicated it. And when you just kind of go against what everybody else is doing, right? Like you really do find a stride and something that's really, really cool. For you specifically, I know you say you have a lot of time now, but how much time did you put in the beginning when it wasn't like a quote unquote overnight success? How long did you take with YouTube videos, with blog posts, with all that?
Yeah, so it depends on what's called the traffic source, which is basically what that is,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a blog or YouTube or whatever. And most of those types of traffic sources, when you're going the free route, like I'm not paying for advertising,
Mm-hmm.
then there is kind of a prove it period, I like to call it, where you need to kind of be there over and over again over the course of time. Not saying that your content isn't any good or why it's not ranking in search, but mainly because just people don't know you exist yet. So
Mm-hmm.
once you kind of push that particular phase or the ghost town phase is sometimes what I tell my students. Once you get through that particular ghost town phase, then things start to kind of pick up. They call it like the hockey stick curve, where it's really low, and then just one day when things kind of catch, things skyrocket. So the amount of time that was needed to get there, especially for my blog, it probably took about 3 to 4 months before I had even made my first $100 on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then by the time got around 8 to 9 months, a few $100. By the time I made a year, made my first $1,000 in a single month just from the income from the blog. And then after about 2 years, I was making enough to replace not just my wife's income but mine. So it was a big curve, but it did take almost a year or so before I even saw, my first what is it, 4 figures online, I guess you can say.
That's so cool. And again, what was your why, I guess? Because that's what you said, you got to find a reason other than money to keep going. So what kept you going until you saw those kinds of metrics?
Yeah, well, part of it was seeing other people's success and reading about other people's success and just
Mhm.
knowing that it was possible. Once I realized that it was possible, then I just kept pushing forward. I just kept, they say, okay, once you get to X amount of blog posts, once you get to X amount of YouTube videos, and you should be making X amount of dollars by that point. And that's kind of what I was using as a gauge. And then having my family around was really helpful because I knew I needed to do it for them, and I knew since it had an end goal, all I had to do was just get there. So there was days where I was writing, 2, 3 blog posts in a single day. I was just really churning it, and a lot of that time too. I remember Benji, my son, he was just born at that time, so it would be late at night, and I'd be on baby duty at that moment, and I was doing research, and I was writing, and I was doing all of this stuff, and just taking the time, almost any second that I had, to be able to learn something, listen to a podcast here, learn a new strategy there. And that was really just to take advantage of time. And I remember I even stopped watching Netflix. I
Mhm.
realized just how much of a time waster it was to sit there and watch, 24 episodes, all that are an hour long. And I could have spent that time doing so many other things that are going to help build myself, help build my income, and help build a business. And once I made that realization, things started to pick up.
Yeah, I feel like that's been a big thing for me too in the pandemic. Like what we're kind of talking about here is from shifting from a consumer to a creator, right? And there's a fundamental shift. The way you look at time changes, I think. And like you're saying, it's like, oh, I could have learned this. Oh, I could have gotten ahead here. And oh, like you just start to, I don't want to say, do you feel it's guilt? I don't know. I wouldn't call it guilt, just,
Yeah, no, I would definitely call it, even though that shouldn't be what it is,
yeah.
because you do get to the point to like you're just saying. Once you go from being a consumer to a creator, then you're always creating content, for whatever medium you're looking at. But the problem is when you're not creating content, you start to feel like, man, I should be creating content right now,
Yes.
or something like that, and that's what causes the burnout. You hear about YouTuber burnout, you hear about your business just burning you out. But as long as you set parameters, like I was telling you earlier about the schedule, once I set a schedule, it was helpful to I can sit down and say, okay, I know I'm not supposed to be working now, so that's the way I worked out.
Yeah. I wish we could talk about that. But okay, moving on. Question number 3. So it kind of goes actually with what you're talking about, because you're going to use that mentality going forward. So who will you be in the future? Are there any other ways that you're thinking of monetizing everything? What are the goals with the podcast? More courses? What's the vision here?
Yeah, so right now I am concentrating a lot on the courses and
Mm-hmm.
trying to teach other people how to do the same thing that basically I've been able to do. You don't realize just how many people don't have the right direction. Once you're in a situation where you notice that there's not a lot of direction. So, for example, I know that didn't make a ton of sense, but for example, when I'm looking at when I'm researching, okay, I have a course, all right, and one course, and one of those courses is helps people build blogs. All right, it's
Mm-hmm.
called Blog Builder Pro. So in order to help people who are trying to blog, I need to find the people who are trying to blog, figure out what they're struggling with, and then create, something that can help them out of their struggle. So you find those people in like Facebook groups, you find those people in message boards or other places online, or even a comment section of a YouTube channel or something like that. And you start just helping those people. So when I realize sometimes I will see the questions that they're asking, and I'm thinking to myself, like, that's simple. You should be doing XYZ, but it's not as simple to them because they're just getting started. And sometimes a lot of creators, after they've been doing it for so long, they kind of forget what it's like to be right there at the very beginning. So that's who I tried to talk to, the people who are just like how I was tired of their jobs, was looking for a passive income somewhere else, that was looking for something to do other than the traditional 9 to 5 job, traditional go to college, get in a ton of debt, and then go, and get a job and then pay off that debt for the next 40 years. I didn't want to do that. I was part of that for a long time, but that's what I was looking to get out of. So now that's where I am right now, just helping people realize that, hey, you don't need to have the traditional job in order to earn an income. You can earn a second income by working on yourself and learning digital ways to earn money.
Yeah. And what I also feel about you is that you're talking about a lot of organic growth, right? So do you run any ads
Yeah.
at all?
Yeah, I do run ads. That was something that I did later in the business, once the business was kind of established and had income coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have like a marketing budget, where I say I'm
Ooh,
only going to spend
fancy.
X amount of dollars
Yeah.
on marketing this month or something like that. And when I hit that nose, I stop, because there's no point in, burning yourself out, especially when an advertisement might not be converting the way that you want it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole world. I'm not going to get into it right now, but it's
No,
a whole
yeah, I'm
world
learning that
when
world
it
right
comes
now.
to.
Um,
Yeah,
but I,
go
I
ahead.
also like that you mentioned how to start organically. So I've been watching a lot of YouTube channels and a lot of threads too about how to grow your base without paying. Because I don't know if people are like picking up that, I don't know, the universe is sending me temptation, I feel, but I've had like anywhere from 7 to 10 people message me on Instagram to like buy followers. And they're like, hey, I'll give you these 25,000 or whatever. But that's not the way I want to do it, right? And I don't think that's the way anyone who has success does it. They do it organically, and everything that they said to do to build your audience is what you've done. You've gone into the comment section, you've gone into blogs and groups. Like basically you're just serving before you're paid for it, I would say, right?
Yeah, I mean, organic numbers are so much better than in artificially inflated numbers.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I'd rather have a core group of 2 to 3 thousand people who actually like me and what I produce and how I can help them get what they want in life versus 100,000 people who can care less.
Right.
So you need to have the proper perspective on it. Numbers are they're kind of fleeting. You see people online, they pop up overnight, all of a sudden they have 100,000 subscribers, but then they don't know how to monetize it, or maybe it's the wrong audience and now they have to create content that they don't like for an audience that don't they're only watching them because they had that one video pop that they just made because they were trying to get views and trying to get subscribers. So once
Right.
you realize the importance of having a nice pure audience that's all interested in one thing, it's slower. Growth does take a lot longer with that, but once the growth is there, I mean, you can have a full income for life at that point.
Yeah, sustainable income, right? That's the key.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, there's a principle called the 1000 true fans principle. And it's like,
Kevin Kelly, yeah.
yeah, and if you have that, I mean, you're golden, right? And so really, like sometimes I get frustrated too because I'm like, oh, I want this to take off. Like I'm super, super like speed demon, right? But entrepreneurship is actually teaching me to slow down, and it's almost teaching me everything that I wanted to avoid because of my ego, right? Like I didn't want to repeat content or I didn't want to repurpose content because I felt like that was lazy. But everywhere that I look, that's what they're saying to do. Just
Yeah.
repurpose, rebatch, rewrite, formulate, make a video about the blog post. And like it's really, really, really like all about pride, I think. And when you're humble and when you can just serve people correctly, I think that's when the success really starts coming.
Yeah, that sounds more like the Gary Vaynerchuk approach right there,
Mm-hmm.
where he just, you create on every platform known to man. And then in his situation, I mean, he's a grinder like that. Not everybody are grinders. The way that I look at it is, concentrate on one traffic source until you get it where you want it, rather than trying to spread yourself too thin because you end up with 10 or 20 half-done projects, which gets you nowhere. You'd rather have one project that's completed and working. So yeah, it would be nice to be on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter and blogging, and you can do all of that. That's great, and repurposing content's nice, but different people consume content differently, So there's some people who would rather read. Those are going to be your people. The people who would rather watch you, those will be your YouTube. People who rather listen, your podcasters. So you get the point there. So
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely say, it's nice to kind of be everywhere, maybe even create a profile everywhere and try to post every now and then. But even from my Instagram, you can check that out. I post there maybe once a week, when I get time and find something interesting to post.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I'm more concentrating on podcast, YouTube, and blogging.
How's podcasting been for you?
Oh, so the podcast has been going on since about July. If you don't mind, it's called the Blogger Evolution Podcast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's helping people see that, a lot of people believe that blogging is dead. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
where they got that from, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not. And I call it the Blogger Evolution Podcast because it's showing that blogging has changed. It's not dead, it's just evolving, and that's kind of where I'm trying to show people like the new way to blog. I have a strategy that I use that I've been able to replicate over and over and over again in different types of what are called niche blogs or niche, depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah.
And by creating blogs like that, I'm now able to turn around and show other people how to do it as well.
I mean, when you think about the major news sources now too, like Huffington Post, Medium, all those are all bloggers and contributors doing that. Like those huge companies only employ a couple of thousand now, and literally all of their content comes from people like you and me. So I definitely think that you're right when you say that blogging's just evolving, and people think that bloggers sometimes are not authorities, but then bloggers become contributors for, let's say, the Huffington Post or whatever. Like they end up becoming the experts, but it's because of their blog. And some people want to wait for that expert status before they start a blog. So I think that's interesting. And I think that's really cool. Do you interview people, or it's just you kind of monologuing? What's that like? You have about 30 seconds.
Yeah, so far the blog is only about 10 episodes in, so it's all been me. So I'm trying to establish myself as the authority first, and
Yeah.
then I'm going to bring in successful bloggers as time goes on, and then show that other people are doing it as well.
I mean, you are an authority. I don't think you have to establish it, but yeah, I guess, just I don't know. You want to do your thing. I get that. So,
Well,
okay,
from the
final question.
podcast perspective, yeah.
Yeah. Final question. So this one, you've kind of been touching on it briefly throughout the whole podcast, but let's just wrap it up here. And the fourth and final question we always ask guests is, how can listeners avoid clocking out? So how do listeners stop making excuses? How do they start going after their goals, really reaching for those maybe unconventional, traditional paths? What do they do, and how do they get it done?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing is to accept the fact that it's not going to be easy. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to realize, that this is not going to be easy. It's not going to be an overnight thing, and it just happens. No one just falls down on, a multi-million-dollar business. That doesn't just happen. You have to work towards it. You have to do things that are going to help you get there. I've gotten a lot of things, some people can look at my business, maybe they can look at my business model and say, hey, he got a lot of things right. But to be honest, I got a lot of things wrong first. So that's how I know what to do, which is right. I wouldn't have got there had I not. I'm the kind of person, I'm sorry to change subjects, but I'm the kind of person where if I took a true false test where I get a 50-50 chance, I miss every single question. Okay. But then if I could take that test a second time, guess what? I'm going to get them all right.
Yeah.
But that used to annoy me about myself. But now I realize that the fact that I never gave up is really what is I was able to have some success with that. And I think when I realized that I was doing it for myself and for my family and not just to make a buck, then things really started to kind of move forward, because now my primary, I wasn't focusing all of my power on, I got to make that dollar. I'm focusing it on, I got to make this work. And once it started working, that's when the income started to come in.
That's a nice way to phrase that. I had something and then I was listening and I lost it. But I also like that you mentioned that, you kind of just have to know yourself, right? Like one approach is not going to work for, like, you might have a totally different way of doing things and I might have a totally different way of doing things, but they're both going to be right.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many, what they say, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of ways in which you can do it. There are popular podcasters out there. There are popular YouTubers, popular bloggers. And a lot of those people, they don't really do anything else. If once they find something that they're good at, they stick with it. But then once they maybe have created systems and put them in a way to where they can kind of work on their own, they can either use that free time to do something for themselves, or they can use that free time to build up another traffic source somewhere else. And all of a sudden they might have a chance at doubling their money, or tripling the money. So it depends on where you are in life, what it is you want to focus on, what you're good at. If you like writing, then try blogging. If you like writing, I wouldn't suggest trying blogging. It really just depends what you're good at, what you enjoy, and just picking something and going with it, not just sitting back and thinking, oh, it's saturated. There's already a million podcasts out there. Why do I want to start my own podcast? That's not how you look at it. You need to look at it as though I have an individual voice. I have a way of looking at things and a way of thinking about things that's different from the other 7.5 billion people on the earth. So because of that, like you said earlier, the 1,000 true fans theory, you only need about 1,000 people, in order to make a full-time income. And just got of those 1,000 people, there's like 4 billion of them have access to the internet. So 1,000 versus 4 billion is like minuscule. It's almost mind-boggling the way you look at it, because it's just, you only need a very, very small percentage of people to enjoy what it is that you're doing, and you can make a significant income from it.
I mean, even like, let's say we wanted to kind of cheat that 1,000 fan theory, even if we had just 500 fans that spent double the money that the 1,000 would, like,
Yo,
you got it.
yeah, exactly. Like I think the way the theory goes is, if you can find 1,000 people who are like how Pat Flynn says, you're super fans, where
Mm-hmm.
they're like, you think about old bands and stuff that used to go around the world. The people who would buy their shirts, buy the hats, buy every album that they put out. You need to get those kind of fans, people who
Mm-hmm.
will buy anything that you recommend or anything that you put out there. And once you get 1,000 of those people, that you can somehow make $100 on them, depending on what it is that you suggest and what they buy, that's $100,000. But
Mm-hmm.
even then, like you said, if you only got half of that, that's still $50,000. That's a decent amount of money for that a lot of people live on. I believe in the United States, at least, I believe like the average income is only around $30,000 to $40,000. So being able to do that just by convincing 500 people, to buy something from you, that's not that big of a task. It just takes a while to get there.
Yeah, and I want to talk about one final point because I think it works in this question, and I saw it in your YouTube video. So you mentioned how people focus on the wrong things when they're starting their blogs, right? They want to make the website look very pretty. They want to do certain things and focus on, I guess, what I'll call the aesthetics or the vanity. But you're saying, stop focusing on the wrong things and just focus on what really matters. And I think that applies to most of entrepreneurship. Do you want to kind of give some advice on that final little note before we wrap it up?
Yeah, it's tough because when you're creating a blog, you want to make it look great. You want to make it look perfect. You might spend, 2 weeks. I remember I had a student in particular who he spent like 3 weeks just coming up with a domain name. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
just the domain name. And then you think about other people who might spend a month designing their website. And all of those, what's going people to your blog is you writing the content. One of the big examples that I use, I mean, I don't use the website very often because I'm not a big politics guy, but it's called the Drudge Report. If you go to the drudgereport.com, it's an extremely simple website. It's just a white background and some text. That's basically the entire website. And it's one of the most heavily trafficked websites on the internet. It doesn't matter what your website looks like. It's just, is the content good? Are you helping people get where they want to be? By doing that, everything else is going to fall, uh, uh, to place afterwards.
I mean,
But right now, just focus on the content.
even if you think about Google, right? Like they literally just have their logo in the front and that's it. And the problem they solved was putting everything in an organized place where we could all find it and keeping track of it. That's it. They have no design, like they got crazy now with the daily little logo changes, but that's all it is.
Yeah, and you know it on the head right there. All you need to do is just solve a problem. It can be a problem as simple as how to improve my golf swing. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you got to solve a problem. Every big business in the world solves a problem. Just Uber gets people where they want to go. Airbnb gets you find somewhere to sleep. Nike gets you, shoes for the most part.
Mhm.
McDonald's will, fix your hunger. They all fix something. So once you find a question out there that needs answering, go out there and answer it, help the people who are asking that question, and you're going to have yourself a full-time income on your hands.
Yeah, I saw some masterclass that said all those random thoughts that you think are like, why isn't there a product that does this, this, and this? We talk about those sometimes when we go on our trip and we're like, that's random. But that's actually an idea that you could capitalize on. So I just think maybe trusting your ideas more and, worry about the quality and then eventually worry about the packaging. If you can get both right, because you're a grinder, like you said, that's great. But do what matters first, and I think you'll be into something.
Yeah, one big thing with me is validation. So I would definitely, like we mentioned earlier, go to where the people who you want to sell to, go where they are online, not to sell to them, just to ask questions. Figure
Mm-hmm.
out what problems do they have, and can you answer those questions. So you said sometimes you could be out in the middle on vacation and say, man, how come they don't create that?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden go online and start researching it. Have other people had that exact same question? If you find a pocket of people who could use that solution, it may be worth going after it.
Yeah. And so we are done with the interview. So how you did was that, the 3 questions, you beat the clock, and then 1 got you with the timer. But overall, it's just, do you outnumber the ratio? So you beat the clock. How did you feel?
Hey, I'll take that. I like games. Games are fun. My son and love it. We just got finished playing Mario Kart, so we're always playing some type of game. So I do enjoy, kind of the 30 seconds. Oh, I gotta wrap this up quick. That was kind of fun. Yeah.
Cool. And did it make you think about time differently? Or because I feel like some people are really, really paranoid about it. And it's like time really controls how they speak, even. I had one guy even say, I didn't even know how fast I should speak because maybe I was going to take up too much time or too little time. And so some people are very paralyzed by that, and some are super relaxed. So, how was your experience with it?
Oh, well, I'm typically, I mean, like I said, I can talk, if you can't tell, if you haven't noticed, I can definitely talk, but I'm also good with time constraints because I do some public speaking as well. So, I
Uh-huh.
mean, if someone says, hey, you got 5 minutes to do this, then I'll come up with, 5 minutes just to kind of wrap it up. And, I mean, it does take a little bit of experience and just
Mm-hmm.
knowing how to speak extemporaneously. So,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I've been able to do. So yeah, it wasn't much of a hardship on me at all. It was really fun.
Yeah, I like how relaxed you felt. And like, even when we were prepping, you didn't seem phased by it at all. I mean, normally I can see the nerves behind the scenes, and then when we're here, they pull it off. But you were cool, calm, and collected the whole time, Chris. So that was nice.
Hey, I'm better than some of those people. I appreciate that because a lot of work has gone into that. This isn't something that just kind of happened overnight.
I mean, I
A
just
lot
feel
of a
like
lot of work toward it.
I feel like even when they're nervous though, that's indicative that they care, right? So that's something that I want to say too for people who are like, "Oh my God, I can never do something because I'm gonna get nervous." Like the nerves show you care, so just conquer the nerves. I mean, that's
Yeah,
super.
conquer the nerves. I remember being in college, or even high school. I'd always be the guy that like they poked. Okay, hey Chris, you talk. I'm just like,
Yeah.
why? But it's because I just have to be good at it. So a lot of the things that I do on YouTube, a lot of that is just like an outline that I follow, not necessarily word for word, and then I just
Mm-hmm.
kind of speak. So after you create 100, 200 videos, you do kind of get a knack at it, which is what I'm trying to get better at with podcasting. I'm able to kind of just speak freely and just go off, what's on the top of my head. And that's really fun versus always having to sit there and read a script because it doesn't sound the same.
Right, exactly. And I was always that person too. So I mean, even now, like whenever we have trainings or faculty meetings, staff developments, whatever you call them, I'm the one that they're like, "Hey, come on, Michelle, you're gonna do that." So,
Oh,
I,
yeah.
like really,
Sorry.
really listen to that, right? When people tell you that, they're onto something. So they're guiding you to the right place. That's the point I
Yeah.
mentioned in the book that I wrote. But that's another pitch for another day. Anywhere they can find you?
Whoa,
Any
book.
handles you want to drop or anything like that?
I don't know. I want to hear about your book, but yeah, it's you can find me over at Benji's dad. Basically, I've tried to own that keyword. So even if you Google it, you're going to see a lot of the stuff that I've produced, website, YouTube channel. The podcast is not called Benji's dad. It's called the Blogger Evolution
Yes.
Podcast. So
Right.
check me out there. You're already listening to a podcast. So chances are you could probably listen to mine as well.
There you go,
Cheap, gratuitous
Chris.
plug, but hopefully it works.
I
Hopefully it
love
works.
that. The little plug. I love it. So yeah,
Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much. We're wrapping it up here. And anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I guess one of my favorite sayings: "Do something now that your future self will thank you for." So do something now, and then when you look back at it years later, man, I'm glad I tried that. Or maybe, man, I'm glad I tried that, but at least you did it, and know whether or not it worked for you or not.
That's one of mine too. Oh my God, it was meant to be. Okay, anyways, we are clocking out here, but don't you clock out in your own life, guys. Thank you.